God is dead, I say. Not that I am going atheist, but that the world at large seems to move on with its life as though God were dead. However, I think we can also apply this phrase to the atonement of Jesus Christ. But let me tell you a story, for in the year 1889, a horse collapsed in a town square from exhaustion. The driver got out a whip and began punishing the horse mercilessly. When out of nowhere a madman rushed up to the fallen horse to protect it, throwing his arms around it and cried, "It is okay, I understand you." This man, Friedrich Nietzsche, and he wrote those immortal words, "God is dead." These words would become the most misunderstood phrase in the world, for in the year 2018 in Twin Falls, Idaho, an LDS church was vandalized with those very words, "God is dead." Contrary to popular opinion, this phrase does not mean a secret combination among disenchanted atheists. There are no atheist professors that want every theist student to sign a document that says, "God is dead." No, this is not the meaning of the phrase. To say he never existed in the first place. Not even the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can catch a glimpse of its true meaning and purpose. In each video I make on the atonement of Jesus Christ, I have consistently avoided answering one central question. What put God in a tyrannical position? What cornered him in which he had to choose between having all of his disobedient children going to hell forever, or having his beloved son brutally tortured and sacrificed? Behold, no unclean thing can dwell with God. Behold, I will tell you who cornered God. The answer came not from an apostle or high authority of the LDS Church, not from an ancient apostle either. Behold, this prophet was not ever ordained to the holy priesthood, neither did he believe in God, yet had he light enough to say what all were too timid, too scared to say. This man told us, Friedrich Nietzsche. He said, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him." As we journey through this life, we realized our consciousness was imprisoned in a fleshy vessel. We came kicking and screaming. We realized life is pain. According to psychologist Otto Rank, birth is the most traumatic experience in life, and then life is simply one traumatic experience after another. For the small child, its simple mind cannot possibly comprehend any gray area. These things are either the most joyful experience ever, or the most tragic. The little babe jumps for joy or sobs profusely. The denial of cake is tantamount to unjust torture, and getting to eat the cake is tantamount to heavenly bliss. As adults, we look down and think, "Oh, you poor child, oh, babe who sucked life. You have no idea how hard reality is. You have no idea how hard life really is. You have it easy." Yelling and screaming, unable to communicate any other way. It is only because of an underdeveloped brain that small children forget their traumatic experiences. But if they understood the concept of death fully, and held on to each traumatic moment, perhaps they would be tempted to say, "Curse my parents for bringing me into this cruel world."
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death. Is this a curse? Or some kind of punishment? I often think about the God who blessed us with this cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance to kill him.
Men fall from the sky. The gods hurl thunderbolts. Innocents die. That's how it starts. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness. that turns good men cruel.
We fell in attempting to take our first steps, having partaken of forbidden knowledge, of pain we could not endure, a cross too hard to bear. In an attempt to walk, we fell. Down we fell while on a path to becoming like God. Even as we became greedy for more of his forbidden knowledge of good and evil, the one thing every war is fought over, every conflict of interest. For as we fell, God said, "Behold, man has become as one of us."
There was a time above, a time before. There were perfect things, diamond absolutes. Things fall, things on earth, and what falls is fallen.
Why do we fall, sir? So that we can learn to pick ourselves up.
But in attempting to pick ourselves back up, we made up
A beautiful lie.
Mankind became confused and invented murder. How could we worship such a God that would allow us to fall so? What wretched being lies above us that saves not the sick and dying child?
The problem of evil in the world. The problem of absolute virtue. The problem of you on top of everything else. You above all. Because that's what God is. Horus, Apollo, Jehovah, Kal-El, Clark, Joseph, Kent. See, what we call God depends upon our tribe, Clark Joe. Because God is tribal. God takes sides. No man in the sky intervened when I was a boy to deliver me from Daddy's fist and abominations. I figured out way back. If God is all-powerful, he cannot be all good. And if he is all good, then he cannot be all-powerful.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
God would reach out to Israel many times, but they consistently rejected him. Why? Jehovah the Mighty? Yet he seemed to struggle to maintain a large group of loyal followers, no matter which nation he entered. Everywhere he went, people rejected him, turning him away. And Satan came among them, saying, "I am also a son of God." And he commanded them, saying, "Believe it not." And they believed it not. And they loved Satan more than God. And men began from that time forth to be carnal, sensual, and devilish. Feeling powerless, Jehovah, who, were it possible that man could number the particles of the earth, yea, millions of earths like this, it would not be a beginning to the number of his creations. He wept over the earth, and from his tears came a flood and wiped the world clean. And he beheld Satan, and he had a great chain in his hand, and it veiled the whole face of the earth with darkness. And he looked up and laughed, and his angels rejoiced. After being sustained by religion and God for thousands of years, according to Jacques Lacan, these things became so ingrained in our psychology that without God, we began to make religion out of secular things to replace him. Mankind turned to false idols. They worshipped money, the body, the ego, and other things. They then cared not for their brothers. They cut each other open, spilling blood to be sucked into the earth. They cut open each other and ripped out hearts to make human sacrifice. They stormed castles to rape and pillage, and had the audacity to say, "God told me to do it." If you found God to be an almighty being, he would be so far above us that he couldn't connect with us. No limits or fear of death. There would be no self-reflection, and therefore no consciousness in God. If this God didn't have empathy to know the human condition and suffer what we suffer, you would indeed say to him, "Thou vile and cruel God, how dare you sit on a comfy topless throne high above and use the earth as thy footstool? How dare you command us to love you? How dare you give us commandments of any kind? You know nothing of the human condition. You know nothing of fear, of pain, of sorrow, or of death.
And now, you will fly to him, and you will battle him to the death. Black and blue, fight night. The greatest gladiator match in the history of the world. God versus man. Day versus night.
In the beginning was the gospel preached through the Son, and the gospel was the Word, and the Word was with the Son, and the Son was with God, and the Son was of God. And the same Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth.
He'll be an outcast, a freak. They'll kill him.
How? He'll be a god to them.
Mighty Jehovah was made flesh and came before us as Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He preached peace and righteousness. He performed many miracles and amassed a large following of faithful disciples. However, his preaching became hard for many to hear. When a large group of people abandoned him, he turned to his 12 disciples and asked, "Will ye also go away?" And Peter answered by asking that if not follow Christ, who could they go to who would sufficiently fill the void in their heart? Behold, when such a powerful yet humble man came before us, Plato predicted what would happen to him. We would not believe such a righteous man, for we never saw such a righteous man. We would demand proof that he could remain so moral even under the most vilest and most cruel of circumstances. For if he seem to be just, he will be honored and rewarded, and then we shall not know whether he is just for the sake of justice or for the sake of honors and rewards. Therefore let him be clothed in justice only, and have no other covering, and he must be imagined in a state of life, the opposite of the former. Let him be the best of men, and let him be thought the worst. Then he will have been put to the proof, and we shall see whether he will be affected by the fear of infamy and its consequences. And let him continue thus for the honor of death, being just and seeming to be unjust. When both have reached the uttermost extreme, the one of justice and the other of injustice, let judgment be given, which of them is the happier of the two. To which it is said of this perfectly moral and just man, that he will be scourged, racked, bound, will have his eyes burned out, and at last, after suffering every kind of evil, he will be impaled. And that is exactly what happened to Christ. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, and smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he openeth not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken, and he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. He was resurrected, yes, but he couldn't just die spiritually and physically. He had to die morally. A great apostasy was inevitable, and we killed him. For Paul knew the time will come when we would not endure sound doctrine, but after our own lusts shall we heap to ourselves teachers, having itching ears. And we shall turn away our ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. He said, "When ye come together in church, I hear there be divisions among you, and I partly believe it. For there must also be heresies among you, that they which are approved may be made manifest among you." He said that Christ would not return to the earth except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, shewing himself that he is God. And for those who called themselves disciples, those who dared stand by that man who represented that same God who brought you into a cruel world, Christ says of you, "They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another, and many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold." Many dragged the name of Christ through the mud, killing and saying, "We are good, and all else are evil." They thought they were preserving the legacy of Christ, when in reality they had their foot on their God with a spear ready to kill him at a second's notice, saying,
You were never a god. You were never even a man.
Perhaps if they saw the humanity in God, they would not have killed him, but we refused even to look. The cross became a shadow on a cave wall, an immense, frightful shadow. Christianity became a hollow of its former self. Men worshipped, but they knew not what. They carried on traditions long after the meaning was forgotten and dead. The doctrine they corrupted and twisted for their own needs. And many came preaching for money alone, amassing large cult-like behavior among the masses, and embracing fully slave morality, killing and damning to hell any who opposed. Man claimed to worship God, but he was deceived into killing him instead. Men have come to speak of the revelation as somewhat long ago given and done, as if God were dead. The injury to faith throttles the preacher, and the goodliness of institutions becomes an uncertain and inarticulate voice.
I give you just a few words from Harry Emerson Fosdick, in which he said, "If Jesus should come back to earth now, hear the mythologies built up around him, see the creedalism, denominationalism, sacramentalism carried on in his name, he would certainly say, 'If this is Christianity, I am not a Christian.'" And in Smith's Bible Dictionary, written by 73 noted divines and Bible students, the statement was made that one must not expect to find the gospel of Holy Writ in its perfection upon the earth today. He said it is not to thus be found perfect either in any fragments of Christianity or in the Christianity or any fragments thereof.
Is it any wonder then that Friedrich Nietzsche asked, "Where is God gone? Is he totally gone from the world?" He called out, "I mean to tell you, we have killed him, you and I, we are his murderers. But how have we done it? How were we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the whole horizon? What did we do when we loosened this earth from its sun? Whither does it now move? Whither do we move? Away from all suns? Do we not dash on unceasingly? Backwards, sideways, forwards, in all directions? Is there still an above and below? Do we not stray, as though infinite nothingness? Does not empty space breathe upon us? Has it not become colder? Does not night come on continually, darker and darker? Shall we not have to light lanterns in the morning? Do we not hear the noise of the grave diggers who are burying God? Do we not smell the divine putrefaction? For even gods putrefy. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we console ourselves, the most murderous of all murderers, the holiest and the mightiest that the world has hitherto possessed, has bled to death under our knife? Who will wipe the blood from us? With what water could we cleanse ourselves? What lustrums, what sacred games shall we have to devise? Is not the magnitude of this deed too great for us? Shall we not ourselves have to become gods merely to seem worthy of it? There never was a greater event, and on account of it, all who are born after us belong to a higher history than any history hitherto. What are these churches now if they are not tombs and monuments of God? For Nietzsche, the death of God came not with loud praise, but with mourning. For with God dead, all morality dies. With God dead, there is nothing to tether us to the sun, for we have severed the connection. There is no foundation to uphold the morals we claim for ourselves, that we have claimed for so long. All hell would break loose, all blood would be spilled to atone for what we have done to God. The realization would create a large chasm to which an abyss of despair and nihilism would swallow the world. For Nietzsche, the only way out of this inevitable nihilism is to become gods ourselves. He tells us to rise above nihilism and create a new center for morals with art and culture. Yet God remains dead. In the secular world, we seem to have replaced any need for God by explaining away his mysteries with scientific knowledge. In the secular world, more people realize the meaninglessness of life without God. We may find cures for cancer, we may find the solution to controlling the weather, we may learn to live in harmony with nature, we may find a way to end all conflicts, we may engineer significant structures, we may discover the secret to eternal youth. But what does it matter in the face of inevitable death of the universe? Everything will be snatched away from us in the instant. We are still only a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. Many seek to replace God through new moral systems, but they fail, every last one of them. Sartre says we are born without meaning, but then we can create our own meaning. But how does one create something out of nothing, without a block to sculpt from whence comes the sculpture? Kierkegaard tells us to take a leap of faith. But how can we tell where we are leaping if there is nothing to leap towards? Are we just leaping to our inevitable demise? Pascal says we should wager on the existence of God and fear his judgment. But living in fear is just a path to suicide and slave morality. Camus says we should embrace the absurd. However, it is to embrace such an empty and cold thing. De Beauvoir would have us make a performance out of life like actors on a stage. But what if we are acting alone and no one pays us any attention? Does such desire for acceptance in the community only leave us empty in a sad and narcissistic act? What if the world refuses to look at us? What if the universe never looks our way? What if we are alone in the universe? When we face death, do we only face becoming puppets to the universe? When we face death, our life is like a puppet on a festival cart. As soon as one string is cut, it crumbles and fades. Perhaps the only way to derive meaning in a world where God is dead is to become gods ourselves, as Nietzsche suggested. But indeed, the death of God forced us to confront nihilism and choose to abandon all morality or stay true to it. Some may say that such things as science or religion are suitable bases for morality. Still, without God to stand as judge, there is no true justice in the world, as so many criminals go unpunished. So many children go without being cared for, even as we all receive the same judgment upon death. Nothingness. Without God, all things fall to immorality, the world itself becoming a living sociopath.
And here you are. I know you two feel the same. That this world is utterly meaningless. As far as I'm concerned, my brother was everything. And now,
Everything must die!
All around me I see people arguing over individual systems of morality, destroying each other's foundations for morality. The arrogance itself absurd, as they say, all I know is right, and you must know that you are wrong. Not humble enough to face reality and say, no, 'tis I that is wrong.
This world is divided. They are a primitive species, unevolved and at war with one another, too separate to be one. Their free will must be ripped from them, like the other worlds, given absolution in one glorious belief, to serve him. This world will fall, like all the others. For Darkseid. For Darkseid.
The death of God may have awakened a greater evil than has ever been known, dividing us more than ever before, even as we face pure extinction and cease to exist. Death is coming. He is hungry. He has found you, and he smells your fear. Ready or not, here he comes. We may need to resurrect God by uniting together, learning and following God's example of sacrifice. The only way to make meaning for life is to sacrifice for others, to make another's existence meaningful in the moment. All attempts for self-meaning are futile, as you enclose everything around you, and the mountains fall on you and cover you. When things become too hard to bear, allow your fellow humans to sacrifice for you, and you for them. God said, "Love me." We said, "Maybe." He said, "Look at me." And we turned away. So he said instead, "Hate me, break me, crush me, impale me, step on me, kill me, crucify me, make me bleed. Let me feel as hurt as you. Then promise me you'll never let us go." So be a humanist. Have faith in humanity. We killed God, and only we can resurrect him. But indeed, one more thing. Why the Son and not the Father? Because like Father, like Son. The Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise.
However, the possibility of a different future also exists. A future is not given to you. It is something you must take for yourself.
Thank you for watching. I want this conversation to continue in the comments section below. If you want to support me, please consider subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with a friend. It would really help a lot. And remember to keep it righteous.